Hello. Welcome back to the Michael Sisco show. If you would, while I set up super chats, I know I used to have audio issues when I would go by myself. So if you could give me a sound check while I update the um, privacy settings on Facebook so that I can see your comments from there and set up entropy. So just let me know if you can hear me. I haven't gone by myself in a long time, so I have actually since hasn't been since we were Hearth and Fire and we were not on YouTube. So let me know how I sound. Here we go. Edit audience. Also, let me know how you guys are doing. This will be a little laid back, but we are going to talk about the Great Reset because I think a lot of people don't really quite understand what is being proposed with that. But we are, let's see, everything sounds good. Great. I'm still messing around with Facebook and entropy. Let's start that. Let's get entropy set up too. But hey, I am trying to break away from Facebook and big tech. So we are on MeWe now. I have the link in the description. I know it's. I actually think it works better than Parler. I'm also on Parler, but MeWe's better, believe it or not. At least with the functionality and whatnot. All right, entropy's set up. Facebook's being goofy. All right, it doesn't look like I will adjust the privacy settings for Facebook. So if you are watching on Facebook and you would like to leave a comment, I deleted it off of my phone. So for my own peace of mind, just the temptation and the desire to check my Facebook statuses, it was a little overwhelming. So I deleted Messenger and Facebook. So that means I'm having a difficult time updating the privacy settings, which I would normally do at the beginning of the show when the intro is going on, because the phone works better. And I would make it public so I could see the comments on StreamYard here, but it doesn't want to work on my I have too many tabs open, I guess. So if you want to comment, switch over to the YouTube and subscribe, because we are only like 40 subscriptions away from 1,000, and that would be a big help for me. So if you're watching, hit that like button and subscribe. Also, subscribe to DLive as a censorship backup. I only have 48 people that have done that so far, but we all know that inevitably all of us conservative people will probably eventually be kicked off, especially if the wrong person takes office, and which I don't think is going to happen. I'm still hopeful that Trump will win, but and there's really no guarantee that Trump getting a second term will help with the big tech censorship. So subscribe to the DLive channel if you would. Also, New Year's Eve Psalter reading. Still have a lot of slots open for that. If you would sign up for a slot and you want to read, this is the Psalter that we are going to be using. It is a pocket Psalter. It is available from the Jordanville Holy Trinity Monastery bookstore. So if you go on their website, you can pick up a copy of this and some other good books. I just purchased the Four Saints that Father Peter Hears actually recommended at the end of our show. What is my favorite psalm, Ray, the musician? I'm gonna have to go with Psalm 50, just because we say it so often during our services in the Orthodox Church that it's really I don't know. There's a reason that we say it so often, because it's beautiful and it just really kind of explains the Orthodox way of life. As a Jewish guy interested in maybe converting, what scripture would you recommend to read? Well, I would start with the Gospels. Maybe read the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament, and then go right to the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I think would be a good start. And you should read all of them as much as you can, but I think the book of Isaiah and the Gospels is probably a good place to start. So, anyways, we're talking economics today. Very exciting. Very exciting. There's a lot of hoopla about this Great Reset, which is being proposed by a guy named Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum. I know our good friend Jay Dyer has talked about it. You're welcome, P.S. Strubify, or P. Strubify, however you say your name. You're very welcome, and we hope that you do come and join the church. We would love to have you. It is what we are all called to do. We are all called to be in the Orthodox Church. But anyhow, so we do actually need a reset, and I've been advocating for a reset, an economic reset for years, really. And I got most of my ideas from Mencius Moldbug, and he kind of talks about a reset as well. But it's not it's not the same as what we're getting coming out of this great reset pushed by the globalist elites, basically. But we operate under what's called Keynesian economics, right? Where we basically always see increased government expenditures, lower taxes, which I like lower taxes. I don't like. Jack, we do need a jubilee, and I will get into that. But we also have what's called a fiat currency, and what that means is that if you go back and watched an interview that I did with John Truman Wolfe, I think is his name, one of my, I guess, less viewed episodes, but it's probably one of the more important ones. He explains this. So fiat currency, it means that its value is derived completely by fiat. So the decree of the state. It's our money is only worth anything because the state says it is. It's not attached to anything with intrinsic value. And it's also, there's no limit on how many of these dollars can be out in the world. There's no limit, absolutely no limit. The Federal Reserve can just print whenever, at whim. They can print whenever they want to. And we even, within our economic system, we trade futures that are worth more than all of our actual assets. And so our system makes 0 sense. And, we can all, it's not stable. You can look at our history. We obviously have the Great Depression. We had another big crash in the 70s. I lived through the one during George Bush, and then even worse, Barack Obama. And then, of course, COVID-19 crash. And every time that we have one of these crashes and recoveries, the only people that ever recover are the corporations, the giant corporations, the elites. And each time the gap between the 1%, so to speak, which we all know who they are, right? That gap separates between them and the middle and the bottom. The middle class every time disappears and grows smaller to the point where now we basically don't have a middle class. We have the haves and the have-nots. And especially with COVID-19, all of the mega corporations, big tech, Walmarts, the Amazons of the world, Facebook, Twitter, they have all become exponentially more profitable, while small to middle-sized, medium-sized businesses have basically collapsed. And all of these shutdowns are designed to basically hurt the business, the normal businesses. And yeah, Jack, the stock market is at all-time highs. GDP has grown significantly, but and we hear our politicians, even President Trump, tout this, but we're still down here living paycheck to paycheck, and if we miss a paycheck for some reason, or we have one emergency, our lives are basically in a crisis, while the stock market has recovered and the GDP is skyrocketing. Gross domestic product is gross domestic product is not a good measure for quality of life for the average American. And I think that's been true before COVID-19. That has been true, which is why national populism that's become the new brand. That is the future of conservatism, really, and that's why the conservative movement needs to become the working class movement. And part of that's because the Democratic Party no longer represents the interest of the working class as it used to be considered. There is, yeah, it's great if you're a robot, Jack. Yeah, AI, they are literally trying to replace us so that the elites can have basically live the way that they want, and we will. And they want to reduce our population too. So they just don't want us here, We're not in the Luciferian cult. So yeah, we do need a reset, but not the one that the World Economic Forum is proposing. And let's see. Let me see. I have I'm going to do a screen share here. I know it's probably not the most exciting content to do screen shares, but hang on, is that an entropy chat? Dark Traveler, I can't say that. Come on, man. Optics, bro. Optics. He left a comment in entropy with some reading suggestions for our friend on the program. We're not gonna do that. All right. Going to screen share mode. Let me know if I have any. Why is this? All right. Hang tight, guys. Oh, here we go. All right. Just comment. Let me know if you see this, because I can't see my screen share screen. Or wait, I can pull up DLive, I guess. Look at my phone. But I want to read this article because this is straight from the horse's mouth. There's a lot of stuff out there. People claiming that it's an international socialism, and that's not quite what it is, but it might actually be worse than that. I think I might rather have international socialism, to be honest. So let's read this. Good. It's working. COVID-19 lock. So keywords to look at: stakeholder capitalism, and we're going to hit that in a little bit. But so COVID-19 lockdowns may be gradually easing, but anxiety about the world's social and economic prospects is only intensifying. There is good reason to worry. A sharp economic downturn has already begun, and we could be facing the worst depression since the 1930s. But while this outcome is likely, it is not unavoidable. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Every country, from the United States to China, must participate, and every industry, from oil and gas to tech, must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism. So notice the globalist undertones here. It basically says that every country must participate in this. So there are many reasons to pursue a great reset, but the most urgent is COVID-19. Having already led to hundreds of thousands of deaths, the pandemic represents one of the worst public health crises in recent history. And with casualties still mounting in many parts of the world, it is far from over. This will have... So now we see what's really going on here with these COVID lockdown measures. It's all... it is not because of a less than 0.5% fatality rate to save our health. It's to push this. This will have serious long-term consequences for economic growth, public debt, employment, and human well-being. According to the Financial Times, global government debt has already reached its highest level in peacetime. Moreover, unemployment is skyrocketing in many countries. In the US, for example, 1 in 4 workers have filed for unemployment since mid-March, with new weekly claims far above historic highs. The International Monetary Fund expects the world economy to shrink by 3% this year, a downgrade of 6.3% in just 4 months. All of this will exacerbate the global climate and social crises that were already underway. Some countries have already used the COVID-19 crisis as an excuse to weaken environmental protections and enforcement. And frustrations over social ills, likely rising inequality, U.S. billionaires' combined wealth has increased during the crisis, are intensifying. So you can see that they are already trying to present this like something that is going to help us, right? So they're even including a little bit of truth. It is true that the billionaires' wealth has increased during this time of crises, but he's going to be very honest with what they want as the solution, and it's really quite dumb. Left unaddressed, these crises, together with COVID-19, will deepen and leave the world even less sustainable, less equal, and more fragile. So we are seeing this social justice language built into this, right? Incremental measures and ad hoc fixes will not suffice to prevent this scenario. We must build entirely new foundations for our economic and social systems. The level of cooperation and ambition this implies is unprecedented, but it is not some impossible dream. In fact, one silver lining, check this out, of the pandemic is that it has shown how quickly we can make radical changes to our lifestyles. Almost instantly, the crisis forced businesses and individuals to abandon practices long claimed to be essential, from frequent air travel to working in an office. So the elites have seen that they can make us do whatever they want with a little bit of fear, with a little bit of manipulation. We're afraid of a virus that's less than 0.5% fatality rate. Likewise, populations have overwhelmingly shown a willingness to make sacrifices for the sake of healthcare and other essential workers in vulnerable populations, such as the elderly. And many companies have stepped up to support their workers, customers, and local communities in a shift towards the kind of stakeholder capitalism to which they had previously paid lip service. So that's the word for you to remember. Stakeholder capitalism. We're going to learn what that is in just a little bit. Clearly, the will to build a better society does exist. We must use it to secure the great reset that we so badly need. That will require stronger and more effective governments. Through this, though this does not imply an ideological push for bigger ones, it will demand private sector engagement every step of the way. Who is it that censors us and kicks us off of their platforms for posting Christian opinions? Not the government. The Great Reset agenda would have three main components. The first would steer the market towards fairer outcomes. So by fairer, what he probably means is equitable. To this end, governments should improve coordination, for example, on tax, regulatory, and fiscal policy, upgrade trade arrangements, and create the conditions for a stakeholder economy. At a time of diminishing tax bases and soaring public debt, governments have a powerful incentive to pursue such action. Moreover, governments should implement long overdue reforms that promote more equitable outcomes depending on the country. These may include changes to wealth taxes, the withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, and new rules governing intellectual property, trade, and competition. I know this is kind of mundane, but this is all, it's important to hear this straight from the source. The second component of a Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals such as equality and sustainability. Here, the large-scale spending programs that many governments are implementing represent a major opportunity for progress. The European Commission, for one, has unveiled plans for 750 billion euros recovery fund. The US, China, and Japan also have ambitious economic stimulus plans. Rather than using these funds, as well as investments from private entities and pensions funds, to fill cracks in the old system, we should use these to create a new one that is more resilient, equitable, and sustainable in the long run. This means, for example, building green urban infrastructure and creating incentives for industries to improve their track record on environmental, social, and governance metrics. The third and final priority of the Great Reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the Fourth Industrial Revolution to support the public good, especially by addressing health and social challenges during the COVID-19 crisis. Companies, universities, and others have joined forces to develop diagnostics, therapeutics, and possible vaccines, establishing testing centers, creating mechanisms for tracing infections, and deliver telemedicine. Imagine what could be possible if similar concerted efforts were made in every sector, because that's exactly what I want. I want similar metrics to contact tracing and, gene-changing vaccines. The COVID-19 crisis is affecting every facet of people's lives in every corner of the world, but tragedy need not be its only legacy. On the contrary, the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future. All right, hang tight. Let's So, I see we have a lot of comments from that, but as you can obviously hear the globalist undertones. You can see that we're gonna go over this stakeholder capitalism and what he means by that. But it's, as much as Antifa and all of these Marxist groups want to run around basically they're funded by these people, by these globalists. And what they don't realize is that they're not going to get their Marxist revolution. They're not going to get their socialism. They're going to get a world governed by the private sector. And that's what we're gonna let's check out some of these. I'm checking the comments real fast. Let's see. Yeah, fiat currency wouldn't be a thing if the leadership had God in their hearts. um, so what's going to be? Let's see. Pratt says, so what's going to be the biggest short-term impact on the average guy? I'm not quite. We're gonna kind of get to the impact of this in a minute, but I think it might actually be quite attractive for a lot of us average people in the beginning, because they're going to present this as a escape from our current economic hardship, right? And so this might be a Trojan horse in a sense. It's going to seem like this glorious gift, right? But there's a trap behind it. It's a trick. And I will explain that, and once I get through these questions here. Material supply chains of elites are unsustainable. The 2030 vision can only exist in a flawless implementation of neoliberalism. Well, what they're doing now is definitely unsustainable, but instead of switching to something like that's good for all of us, they have something else up their sleeve that only benefits them. Yeah, good luck getting China and India to outsource any production to the West. The only thing India outsources to us is cheap labor, H-1B visas. Pratt 2112, I think we see war soon, major war. That might be better than an unjust peace and slavery that they want us to be in. So you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Great reset, great replacement. Coincidence? Well, they're basically going to strip nations of their sovereignty, so it all makes sense. Chelsea B says it will definitely be attractive. Now, once we get into it, they're presenting this as something that's going to save us, and frankly, a lot of it. Yeah, UBI will probably be part of it. And it might actually help you immediately. Your debts could go away, and this could seem like a very good thing for a lot of people. Which makes me think that all of this, student loan debt forgiveness is all part of this plan as well. Let me check entropy here. Quite a few comments from Dark Traveler. Let's see. These are on entropy. You are never going to get either party to move on anything since the time of Freud/Bernays' government decided you are only to be given the illusion of control. Watch the BBC, The Century of Self. That's true. Reminder, the Great Reset is just an adaptation of Agenda 21 that the Wignats have been screaming about since 2015. Glad you guys are finally figuring out the globalist elites plan to implement Tikkun Olam. Sorry, Dark Traveler. I'm trying to stay on YouTube until at least I get past, at least I get past 1,000 subscribers. But let's go through what the stake. Let's see, Chelsea says people say the same thing about Nisara Gasara. Whole other ball of wax, but too good to be true. Trojan horse solution, nonetheless. Yeah. Don't drive and text, Chelsea. We can see that you can't spell right now. I smell InfoWars BS. Alex, we are reading straight from the World Economic Forum's website. So InfoWars BS? I don't think so. This is straight from them. But let's get into what stakeholder capitalism is. I need the screen share again. Hang tight. I'm glad you don't text and drive, Chelsea. I do it all the time. Just kidding. Just kidding. So, what kind of capitalism do we want? This is Klaus Schwab again, and he's the one presenting these. He's the face man for all of this. Though the concept of stakeholder capitalism has been around for a half century, it has only recently begun to gain traction against the prevailing shareholder primacy model of profit maximization. Now, advocates of a more socially conscious economic system must take steps to ensure that their vision takes hold for the long run. Geneva, what kind of capitalism do we want? That may be the defining question of our era. If we want to sustain our economic system for future generations, we must answer it correctly. Generally speaking, we have three models to choose from. The first is shareholder capitalism, embraced by Western corporations, which holds that a corporation's primary model should be to maximize its profits. The second model is state capitalism, which entrusts the government with setting the direction of the economy and has risen to prominence in many emerging markets, not least China. Okay, that's communism. If you're when the state is controlling the means of production, that's just communism. But they don't want to say these words. They don't want to say socialism or communism because it's scary. But compared to these two options, the third has the most to recommend it. Stakeholder capitalism, a model I first proposed a half century ago, positions private corporations as trustees of society and is clearly the best response to today's social and environmental challenges. Shareholder capitalism, currently the dominant model, first gained ground in the United States in the 1970s and expanded its influence globally in the following decades. Its rise was not without merit. During its heyday, hundreds of millions of people around the world prospered as profit-seeking companies unlocked new markets and created new jobs. But that wasn't the whole story. Advocates of shareholder capitalism, including Milton Friedman and the Chicago School, had neglected the fact that a publicly listed corporation is not just a profit-seeking entity, but also a social organism. Yeah, like a person. Together with financial industry pressures to boost short-term results, the single-minded focus on profits caused shareholder capitalism to become increasingly disconnected from the real economy. Many realize this form of capitalism is no longer sustainable. The question is, why have attitudes begun to change only now? Now, this is actually true. It's not sustainable. One reason is the Greta Thunberg effect. The young Swedish climate activist has reminded us that adherence to the current economic system represents a betrayal of future generations, owing to its environmental unsustainability. Another related reason is that millennials and Generation Z no longer want to work for, invest in, or buy from companies that lack values beyond maximizing shareholder value. And finally, executive and investors have started to recognize that their own long-term success is closely linked to that of their customers, employers, and suppliers. So, yeah. And notice these stakeholders are going to have a set of values, right? That supposedly Gen Z and millennials and people like Greta Thunberg are pushing. A set of values. Wonder what those values are. The result is that stakeholder capitalism is quickly gaining ground. The change in direction is long overdue. I first described the concept back in 1971, and I created the World Economic Forum to help businesses and political leaders implement it. 2 years later, attendees at the forum's annual meeting signed the Davos Manifesto, which describes a firm's principal responsibility towards its stakeholders. Now, others are finally coming to the stakeholder table. The U.S. Business Roundtable, America's most influential lobby group, announced this year that it would formally embrace stakeholder capitalism, and the so-called impact investing is rising to prominence as more investors look for ways to link environmental and societal benefits to financial returns. We should seize this moment to ensure that stakeholder capitalism remains the new dominant model. To that end, the World Economic Forum is releasing a new Davos Manifesto, which states that companies should pay their fair share of taxes, show zero tolerance for corruption, uphold human rights throughout their global supply chains, and advocate for a competitive level playing field, particularly in the platform economy. So look at this. They're going to uphold human rights throughout their global supply chains. We all know that that means globo homo for everyone, right? Globo homo. So more of that, and they're going to have more power to enforce it. And so this is really a sovereignty shift away from the nation states and into companies, into the global international companies who will enforce their view of what human rights are. And to continue, but to uphold the principles of stakeholder capitalism, companies will need new metrics. For starters, a new measure of shared value creation should include environmental, social, and governance goals as a complement to standard financial metrics. So they are going to enforce their values upon us. Fortunately, an initiative to develop a new standard along these lines is already underway with support from the Big Four accounting firms, led by the chairman of the International Business Council, Bank of America CEO, Brian Moynihan. Why don't you guys give that guy a call? Let's send him letters and harass him. I'll post his phone number later. We'll find it. The second metric that needs to be adjusted is executive remuneration. Whatever. Since the 1970s, executive pay has skyrocketed, mostly to align management decision-making with shareholder interest. In the new stakeholder paradigm, salaries instead align with the new measure of long-term shared value creation. So they are, that's also socialism. This is basically a rebranded. This is socialism. So it's not. They're calling it stakeholder capitalism, but basically what it is instead of it, in a sense, it is they're basically going to become our new global government. These companies, these woke capitalists, right? They will be the ones with sovereignty, and thus controlling the means of production and apparently enforcing their values onto the rest of us. So this is not real capitalism. This is a form of socialism, global socialism. Finally, large companies should understand that they themselves are major stakeholders in our common future. Clearly, all companies should still seek to harness their core competencies and maintain an entrepreneurial mindset, but they should also work with other stakeholders to improve the state of the world in which they are operating. In fact, this later proviso should be their ultimate purpose. So that's why they hang LGBTQ flags. Their logos every June turns into, pastel colors. That's why they all hang the BLM flags. That's what we're going to be dealing with here. Their idea of a better world is that. Is there any other way? State capitalism, as proponents would say, also pursues a long-term vision and has enjoyed recent successes, especially in Asia. So, the Communist Party of China, right? But while state capitalism may be a good fit for one stage of development, it too should gradually evolve into something closer to a stakeholder model lest it succumb to corruption from within. Business leaders now have an incredible opportunity. By giving stakeholder capitalism concrete meaning, they can move beyond their legal obligations and uphold their duty to society. They can bring the world closer to achieving shared goals, such as those outlined in the Paris Climate Agreement and the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, if they really want to leave their mark on the world. There is no alternative. Hello, Manic Mike. Yeah, so this is, you are, they're basically, it is communism. They're just changing the words. It's quite the wordsmith job, but it is basically creating a global state of these woke capitalists, the globalist elites. It is a governing, it's a transfer of sovereignty, right? Those who control the global economic system are making more of a power grab. So if we shift to this, then there's really no going back. Chelsea says, yeah, but millennials only don't want to work for these stakeholders because the values they believe are their own original values were actually served to them by Hollywood, which were basically from these people. So, yeah, Jack, it is an oligarchy. To an extent that, I mean, we're in an oligarchy now, for being honest with ourselves. But this is certainly a new level. So there are several problems with this plan, right? For one, the most obvious and glaring problem to me is that these are the same woke capitalists that will fire us for expressing our traditionalist Christian views on homosexuality, on abortion, for our pro-life views. These are the people that are basically don't want us to have a job, to be able to sustain ourselves because of our faith and our views that they view as offensive. These are the people that are kicking us off of their platforms, like what you're watching now on YouTube, on all these big tech platforms, and they want us to just say, yeah, sure, save us. We'll transfer all of this to you, right? We will put our hope in you because you have been so kind to us, right? And it's still going to be a fiat currency system. I have heard rumors. Well, actually, John Truman Wolf has come on the show, and he suggested that they will switch us to a digital currency. But it's not going to be quite like crypto, because crypto you can't really call a fiat currency, because I know at least for Bitcoin, there's a set limit on how many Bitcoins actually exist, right? Now you can mine for them, but it's kind of a serialized system, right? This digital currency will still be just as fake as the US dollar, not attached to any real intrinsic value other than what these globalist elites are telling us it's worth. And yes, Brian Frakes, it is just anarcho-tyranny rebranded. Exactly. And of course, this will destroy national sovereignty. The sovereignty is transferring to the globalist elites completely. Nationalism would be totally non-existent. You might still have a semblance of borders, but of course, will there be any actual effective borders? Probably not. Now, the digital currency will probably also be paired with UBI, which we saw introduced kind of normalized through Andrew Yang, who many people kind of viewed as a populist of sorts. He did have good ideas. He talked about, we have to do something to help us compete in this world with AI, but how much of it was actually freeing us. Now, UBI paired with digital currency under this system that is totally controlled by the globalist elites, what do you think they're going to do to people like me? People that hold Christian values, people who anything that steps outside of that Overton window, a little too far. Do you think you're going to get your UBI payment? No. We're probably going to have like a centralized bank account for this digital currency. We could find ourselves being penalized with the withdrawal of our digital currency. We've already had people debanked. I know Enrique Terrio, the Proud Boys guy, has been banned. I think Chase Bank. You can't open up a Chase Bank account. I know Patrick Casey. I know that he can't open accounts. I know that AIM wasn't able to get a bank account or have payment processors. So if it's more consolidation of power, you're basically handing them complete control over your ability to express yourself. Your freedom of speech is going to be completely gone. Jose says that Biden has already talked about a social justice credit agency. Yeah, and so this is already existing in China too, with the social credit scores. So now I did mention, what should we do instead, right? So we know that this great reset is a terrible idea, but we do need a reset. We do need one because what we have is also terrible, but it's not as bad as what they're trying to shift us into, because they do recognize that our current system is unsustainable. You can't just keep adding debt, printing more money. You're going to have inflation and deflation and these cycles of crash and fall. And that's not even sustainable for them. So they're trying to leverage this with the Trojan horse. But what we do need is to nationalize the economy. We need to shift to a non-fiat currency. And there's several ways that this could be done. You could shift to, I'm not a big fan of the kind of the crypto model, but the crypto model would be better than what we have now if we were to, and I'm not saying digital money, but we could still have cash. I'm not cool with the cashless thing, to be honest. But I mean, a blockchain system would definitely be superior to what they're trying to shift to. But your currency should be nationalized, and it should be serialized. There should only be a certain amount of bills ever in existence, right? And so if there's a limited supply of something, then you have value there because things derive value by scarcity, right? So scarcity creates value for something. And so if you say we're only going to print, this is just a random, $1 million ever, and that's all that there ever can be, that would actually produce a stabilized economy. Of course, it'd probably have to actually be more than $1 million. We have, and you also have to keep all of that money within the country. So you're going to be separated from the globalized system. You can still have trade, right? You can still have international trade, but you're going to be trading goods, like things with real value, goods and services, right? And that's probably the way to the most economic stability. And of course, shifting to that system would require some sort of supplementation from the government during that time. So the boomers might shriek, socialism, right? But no, we're actually moving to actually a more authentic form of capitalism that way. It's just a real bartering society with a stabilized currency. You could also switch to precious metals. A precious metal, either a system where the money is attached to like gold standard, for instance. Now, this isn't as stable as what I just described because it can fluctuate based on mining, right? But at least it is attached to something that it does derive its value from its scarcity, which is why precious metals are worth something. And that's one way that you can kind of prepare for what's coming with this shift to the globalist system, with their digital currency. We can create our own parallel economy. Rated Musician says Peter Schiff enters the chat. Very funny. But one thing that I do is I buy silver. I don't have the funds to buy up all the gold. 1 ounce of gold is like $1,500 right now, and I'm just I'm one of those poor white guys, scum of society right now. But I buy silver and I try and collect metal so that we can have something of value when we don't want to participate in this mark of the beast, basically. But we should cancel. In a shift towards some sort of nationalized system, we can cancel our debts. We should have a national bank of which we are all stakeholders in. We should be the stakeholders, right? The American people should be the stakeholders in this new system. So there would be a process of converting our wealth into this new currency, whatever we decide to use. In the new traditionalist, new Byzantium in America, right? So we will be the stakeholders. There will be an intrinsic value, and it will be a nationalized system, free from the globalist elites. And everyone else who has tried this, has been regime changed. But, there's a reason for that, because the globalist elites want absolute control. Wasn't platinum down for a while? I haven't been keeping up with platinum, so I don't really know. I mostly track gold and silver, but I do think you're right. Last time I looked, I think it was lower than gold, which sounds weird because it's platinum. Sounds like it should be more expensive. But one thing you might want to read. Let me do screen share again. I'm not gonna read this, but I do want to show it to you. Mencius Molebug here on his blog Unqualified Reservations back in 2011 actually wrote on monetary restandardization, and he gets into a lot of about the gold and some of his ideas on switching to a non-fiat currency. And he talks about the debts and the sovereign equity of the fiats. So give this a read. Let me actually post the link in the chats for you guys. I like Molebug. Let me post this link. I'll put it on all the destinations that I can. So give Molebug a read on the money. Do you guys have any? I'm obviously not an economist, but I don't like the idea of giving all of this power to, these people that are anti-Christian, are Luciferians, and they don't accept. They fire us. These giant corporations persecute us in the workplace for our Christian beliefs, or simply for wanting the best for our own ethnic group, criticizing a certain people who, if you step over the line, we get put in the wrong think box. We are canceled, and it's not who I want to be a slave to. So I'd like to live in a Christian society where I can actually live out my faith, um, support traditional values, and still be able to earn a living and raise a family. That's all I want. I want the freedom to live the Orthodox life, and it doesn't seem like the globalist elites want to let us do that. So, how do you think, Evangelos Nikotopoulos, how do you think our economy could transition from morbid consumerism without collapsing? So, Evangelos, you do actually have to, like one thing, for instance, you do need a form of what could be considered socialist measures to kind of be a band-aid during the transition, right? And so you need that, whether you're switching to the globalist elites Great Reset or this nationalized system of non-fiat currency. You will need some sort of government socialist kind of patchwork in the transition. There's no way to avoid that. But the collapse is what we have now is not going to be sustained just by its very nature of continuous just debts and the mass inflation. So there's going to be a collapse. So you might as well take control of it and switch to something that will work for us. And we should be the stakeholders, not these corporations, right? So we should be controlling our destiny there, because money's fake anyways. The U.S. dollar, fiat currency, is literally fake, and it depends on its value is dependent on us accepting it as valuable. So we have to switch to something better. We should have a jubilee. We should cancel our national debts, because if we have any sovereignty as a nation, it shouldn't matter anyways. If we're the sovereign, right? If we are a sovereign power, we can say, screw you, China. Screw you. So who's the sovereign here? Us or China? And we should assert our sovereignty. They mean nothing to us. Their debts should mean nothing. But yeah, you can't transition without some sort of patchwork socialized. So, but this is not like the socialism. The left wants socialism for basically to shift into their communist utopia, right? We just want something to be a band-aid to shift in towards a sane system where we have money that's actually attached to intrinsic value, either by scarcity or like precious metals. So let me check the super chats. I didn't know how this would go today, being by myself, but sorry, Dark Traveler, for missing all of your edgy takes, but thanks for coming on. Surprised that I kept so much of your attention by myself today. So the hour went by pretty quick. The US dollar is valued because you can buy land in America with it and also pay property taxes. Well, yeah. It's also valued, a lot of it's valued because it's currently the world's it's basically only valued because the globalist elites have decided that it is the petrodollar, right? So it is what they use to trade oil. But they're if you think about it, what this guy Klaus Schwab, or whatever his name is, yeah, they're talking about doing away with fossil fuels, right? Switching to this to all of this clean energy stuff. That will wipe away the value of the dollar, because the most of the dollar's value is in the fact that it is the petrodollar, right? That's why that the United States fights so hard for the world to trade, to buy and sell oil with the dollar, and why there's all this geopolitical conflict with countries like Russia and China and Germany, all trying to trade in other there is a push for Russia to make trade agreements to use the ruble for the petrodollar. Well, yeah. It is valuable. It's the strength of the U.S. military presence in the world. Of course, the fiat. So arbitrarily, I mean, that is partly what sovereignty is, right? If you have the ability to say this is worth something, and then you have the power to back it up, which is the military establishment. That's what sovereignty is. But still, it's not wise for it to be it's not stable for your currency to be based solely on your will. Kyle Tabogo, it is necessary to explicitly value freedom over any economic system. My YO. I don't know what YO means. I'm really a boomer when it comes to these shorthands, but I'm not one to be all hyper individualist with my freedom, right? But my freedom of worship, my freedom to be live the Orthodox life and to get married and have kids and raise them without being a slave to your liberal your progressive values, your woke values. That's what I value. True freedom is found in Christ and the church when you're free from your passions, and you have that's true freedom there. True freedom is found in submission to Christ. So, but I want to be able to submit to Christ and not the globalist elites. They don't want to allow that. So, anyways, that was I feel good about that being my first solo show in quite some time. Maybe we will have more of them. Quite the good viewership, more than I was expecting. So I appreciate the support and the questions. Thank you. I hope to see you guys this week. I might be on a very substantial channel on Tuesday. I will follow up with him, but you might see me on a big channel Tuesday. So I'm going to follow up with him now. And I will have another show this week, probably at a weird time in the morning with what's her name? We will have some shows this week, and I might go solo on Thanksgiving. So I know you'll all be home eating turkey and stuffing and all the goodies. I might give you a show. We might have a Thanksgiving special. I have no idea what I'll talk about, but I'm sure I will think of something. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, especially if you are watching on Periscope or Facebook. Come on, please join us on YouTube. I am only about 40 subscribers away from 1,000. So appreciate it, and thank you so much.